Yes, that sound is us. Welcome to GM Chat with Mike and Jeff. Still recovering from the marathon.
Mike's eternal cough.
Yeah. Yeah, boy, you get to be our age, and even, sitting at home in comfy chairs with, donuts and lots of caffeine, and 15 hours a game, and it'll kick your butt. One announcement I do want to mention, we've got a poll going on our homepage, artifactsworldwide.com. We're looking at what we should be playing on board remotely when we're not doing Jackbox games. There are 4 choices. May have stumbled across a 5th choice today.
Oh?
Doing more investigating, but a game called Skyforge.
I don't think I'm familiar with it.
You begin the game by being killed and coming back as a little baby god. You come back as an immortal, and one of the things you have to do throughout the game is actually gain followers. The more followers you gain through the game, the more powerful you become. So far, I've just completed the tutorial, so I don't know much more than that, but it's interesting so far.
Be interested to try that.
Yeah. Yeah. I would be interested to try it where I didn't have to be the tank. Because there's this what looks to be a spellcasting class that looks interesting, but it said you do more damage, but you die more often. It's okay. Well,
Yeah. Blast cannon.
Yep. Maybe I'll maybe I'll stick with the paladin to start. But apparently, in this particular game, if you want to change between classes, you can literally do it on the fly.
Interesting.
You can just swap out what your primary abilities are. It's part of being immortal.
Never had a MMO where you could switch classes before.
Yeah. So that too.
Closest thing would have been Star Wars Galaxies before they actually had classes. I mean, they had classes, but they didn't. It was, you could multi-class in that. It was a point buy. You had so many points that you would earn through experience, and you could buy skills. And you could buy skills from any class. You just had finite amount of skill points. But that's the only MMO I know of that you could do something like that.
Yeah. One of the City of Heroes servers, it's not Homecoming, it's one of the others, instituted a AT-less path where when you go up a level and you get a power, you can pick from any power available to your particular side of the game. So you can literally put your superhero together with exactly whatever powers you want from whatever archetype.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, you could make some horrendously overpowered characters, and you could make some horrendously broken characters. I'm going to take all defender healing powers and be utterly useless in combat.
Yeah.
Out there with your punch and your dart, and that's it,
Right.
So anyway, tonight we thought we'd talk about something that tends to either excite people or cause dread when a game master says, "Gonna need you to write up the character's backstory."
Yep.
And so we're going to talk about backstories tonight. And dig in a little in, what you need depending on what kind of game it is. Um, how much is too much? Because there is such a thing as too much.
Yes.
And some choices to make when you're putting backstory together. And part of that discussion is going to be uh, choices that you should probably avoid simply because they are so overdone. But
Right.
we'll get to that. So, you're getting ready to start a new campaign. You have some information about the world. You figure out what race and class you want to play. You write up the character. And then there are the two decisions that end up being the most difficult for a lot of people: the character's name.
Yeah.
That it shouldn't be a stumbling block, but for a lot of people, it seems like they hit name and go, "Oh man, I don't know what to
Yep.
do. I hate coming up with names."
I've had some players like neglect to name their character because they just couldn't think of a name minutes before actually starting the game and to come up with a name.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Got everything else done.
Yep, just can't decide, what moniker you want to hang on that particular character.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love random name generators.
Yes.
Because if you're truly stuck, you can go someplace and people can come up with, lots of interesting suggestions for you.
Yeah, or inspire you to think of one yourself.
Right.
They're good for that too.
Yeah, I think we've mentioned a couple sites. Probably the site I use the most is Fantasy Name Generators,
Yeah, that's a really good one.
because the amount of different name generators on this single site is staggering.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
A lot of work went into that.
yeah, but the other site that I use and have used for, oh gosh, over a decade at least, maybe two. I don't know how long the site's been around, but is Seventh Sanctum.
Hmm.
And the thing that I love most about Seventh Sanctum is it was particularly handy when working on some of the unique creatures for Acathan, is they have a name generator called Lovecraftian Names. And it's
Okay.
perfect for, some of the horrific things that
Sure.
I've come up with for Acathan, and I guarantee I'm going to be using it more as I flesh that particular part of the world out.
Right.
But so, you can do names. What's your feeling on sort of like plain real world names for fantasy characters?
Plain real world names?
Yeah, like, if you wanted to have a bard in Forgotten Realms and you named him Frank Brown.
Um, well, this is all, opinion, of course. In my case, um, I would decline it. I'm like, no, that's not. I don't want anything that's going to pull you out of the immersion. Naming him Frank is fine, but like Frank Brown, naming him something, you could look through the phone book and find. No, nah.
You could just see, and I immediately start thinking of ways to fix it. Just invert the vowels, flip the vowels, so it's Frank Braun.
Yeah, that's fine. But and it also depends on the kind of game you're running. If it's a tongue-in-cheek kind of, you know, humorous game, or if it's a one shot, I could care less. But if this is something where, you're wanting to develop the character and make him a part of the world. Frank Brown doesn't exist in my high fantasy world. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's all.
All right. So there you go. Names. That's hurdle number 1. Hurdle number 2 is one that strikes absolute terror in certain players, and in others gets them very excited. And that's the idea of writing up that backstory.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times in games I have dealt with this dichotomy. I say, I need a 2-paragraph backstory, and I get people going, oh my God, how am I going to keep it to only 2 paragraphs? And then other people going, holy shit, you want me to write 2 paragraphs?
um, yeah, I have some thoughts on backstories. The very, very first step, the very first thing that a game master needs to do is determine what kind of a campaign they're going to run.
Right.
And what players are going to be a part of it. Because there's some players, they're power gamers. They're, murder hobos. They're not interested. They barely have a name for their character.
Yeah.
All they're interested in are the numbers on their character sheet and making them as, stacked and as good as possible.
Right.
Like right now in COH, City of Heroes, I like to read backstories because there's a place you can write backstories. I love to sit and read backstories. And even on the role-playing server, probably 50% of the characters have nothing in it, and I call them blanks.
Right.
They're blanks. And to me, that's just another word for, number cruncher.
Yeah.
They're just there to pad their stats as high as they possibly can and do what, I don't know. I mean, you can only go so far, and that's all you can do. And then what?
Well,
that's boring to me, but whatever,
There's so many different numbers games, though. I mean, there's the rush to 50. Then there's the rush to maxing out your incarnate levels. There's the badge hunters.
Right, but the badge hunters, that's another aspect of it. But again, you can only go so far.
Right.
And to me, my opinion, if you have an actual character who has a backstory, who has a name, who has a past, has a story, and has a story to tell during the game. I mean, you can go infinitely with that. You can play immeasurably. There's no limit.
Yeah.
No matter how powerful or stacked the character gets, you can keep playing the character and get just as much enjoyment out of it. So I don't understand why people don't do that, but some people don't. They're just not interested in it.
Well,
so
some people approach, and this is the same with D&D. Some people approach it as a role-playing game. Some people approach it as like a video game. That kind of mentality. Let's rack up kills and rack up power-ups and get better gear.
Right. And when we all first started playing D&D, especially myself as a young guy, that's what it was about.
Yeah.
Make a kill list. How many things have you killed? What have you killed? How much damage have you done?
Right.
How much damage can you do if you get this? And that's what it was about, is, destruction. And a lot of that is young man testosterone. I get that. But yeah,
it was also, there wasn't a real heavy emphasis on the idea of role playing in the beginning.
Right.
It was, here are the rules so you can tell stories and your players can overcome challenges
Right.
and get
Yeah,
rewards.
it wasn't until City of Heroes that I actually started considering um, the role playing aspect of it, because with City of Heroes, because I was reading comic books at the time. Um, Comic books actually had stories in them, contrary to what people think.
Mm-hmm.
There were stories, and I'm not talking about uh, 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 plots that conveniently displayed superpowers, although they had that. But there were storylines that had nothing to do with superpowers whatsoever. They were character.
Yep.
It was all character, and so that kind of got me into the character building and backstories and stuff like that in role playing games. But so back to my original point, know your players. What do they want? Because if all they care about are numbers, there's no point in writing a backstory for them. So, but if you have a campaign that you want story driven,
Mm-hmm.
and a little thought that goes into it, and a little something more than just how many bonuses can I get,
Right.
then it's not out of the question to ask for a backstory for the characters.
Yeah. I did a little bit of research on this, since this is, what we were going to talk about today, and found a really interesting article on Geek and Sundry back from September of 2016, written by Katrina Ostrander. And she came up with 5 steps, and I realized that I had sort of internalized step 1 without even thinking about it. Her step 1 is ground your character in the campaign setting. And I realized that was why when we were starting up a Cathan, I made sure to, make a version of my world atlas for all of you.
Yes.
So you would know the backstory and know how the races and classes fit into the world and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that is usually a great place to start, is to know a little bit about your world. It's one of the reasons why, on a completely selfish note, why I like playing in Forgotten Realms. Because I have been playing in Forgotten Realms since it came out.
Yes.
And I know more useless Forgotten Realms lore than I will ever be able to justify to anyone else on the planet.
Right.
But it's just because I've been reading the supplements and the books and the adventures and the novels,
Yeah.
that Jeff Grubb and Kate Novak, R.A. Salvatore, huge influence.
Mm-hmm.
There's a ton of sort of legacy writers that have been writing for Forgotten Realms for 20 years.
Right. Or more.
Yeah. And all that knowledge from the novels, plus all of the knowledge from the books and the supplements and the adventures that D&D put out, it doesn't even require any thought for me anymore to say, okay, this character is going to be set in Forgotten Realms. It's like, okay, well, I know Forgotten Realms about as well as I know Earth.
Right.
I actually know Forgotten Realms probably better than I know Earth, because I know more Farunian geography than probably I do real-world geography. But so it's very easy to do, but it's a great starting point.
Yeah.
because knowing sort of, the dynamics between different nations in the world and different regions in the world, if you decide, okay, this character is going to be from here, it sets up a certain series of possibilities that you're going to pick from initially, versus if it's set over here,
Right.
going to be a completely different set.
Hmm.
Like the difference between having something set in the Dale Lands versus having something set in Thay.
Right.
Massively different.
Um, yes. Yeah, that's a well, that's a great place to kind of start is what region are they from and
Mm-hmm.
what is the world about,
Yeah, and in particular, what is their world about?
Yeah.
What did they grow up experiencing living in that area?
Yes. Which this kind of leads me into one thing I believe that every player needs to be mindful of when coming up with a backstory. And that is don't overwrite your backstory.
Yes.
Don't write this epic novel where they did this great thing and they've gotten this artifact passed down through their heritage and it's like by the time you're finished your character's already level 20.
Right. Right.
You're not starting at first level. you know
Right.
so uh you know leave most of the story open. He still or they still have a long set of adventures ahead of them.
Mm-hmm.
Just keep it basic. you know why are they out adventuring? Why what has motivated them to begin adventuring? That's a great place to begin their you know their thing. You can come up with a personality, basic personality. Let me tell you something. With Airman, I had thought of, okay, this is what he's going to be like. you know, I had this clear cut idea of what kind of sort of personality archetype he was, and okay, blah blah blah, good to go. And then we started playing, and then I started getting all of these other ideas as we were playing, and the more I was playing with him, and now he's far more evolved than the archetype I had originally thought of. And that's going to happen, and that's fine. That's why I say don't spend a lot of time on um, detailing out or fleshing out what kind of a person he is. Just have a general idea of what direction you want to go, and then run with it and let the character evolve as you play them.
Yeah, I've noticed that just doing, some of the main recurring NPCs for Lands of Acathan.
Mm-hmm.
Jojo has become much more complex than I envisioned him at first. So has Aloric, so has Wiggy.
Mm-hmm.
They've actually started to become more real than they were
Yeah.
originally written.
Yeah. 3-dimensional.
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking about, there's an idea in just sort of writing in general, writing for anything where you're going to have characters. They said if you're addressing the backstory of a character, focus on what's interesting, because every character has from birth to age 4, they wandered around the village and everyone thought they were very cute and they were
Yeah.
beloved by the community. Not interesting.
No.
Focus on the interesting stuff and leave the rest of it. You can still have it in mind, but don't put it in the initial backstory.
Right.
The other thing with the backstory is you have to leave room for other things to come up during the game. So you don't want to put everything in the backstory.
I think kind of how I approach backstories is try to come up with three characters that has informed your characters
Development.
development. Yes.
Yeah. Three
That
individuals that had an impact on you becoming the person you are.
Yeah, that were influential in some kind of way. It doesn't have to be positive.
Right.
You know, you could have had growing up a bully that messed with you all the time, and that informed this character in this way. But have three different characters from your background that were influential in your development growing up. That's a great place to start. What was your socioeconomic status?
Right.
You know, were you poor? Were you from a small village that didn't have a lot of amenities, or was you well off? You know, and live in an affluent family. You know, just things like that. But all of these little things inform your character and his development or her development. But more importantly, those are tidbits that your game master can use as your story develops throughout the game and the campaign. These things can come back and recur in your life, you know, in some way. And it feeds the game master's ability to expand and create the campaign and have your character be part of it.
Right. Yeah, the Geek and Sundry article, their second rule ties into that idea pretty well, is basically, what does the character want? Everyone has at least one thing they deeply desire. What is it?
Right.
And, you know, you mentioned, you know, the idea of having a childhood bully. Maybe your desire is to make certain that you put a stop to any bullying you run across. Or maybe your desire is to bully other people because you couldn't deal with the one who bullied you.
Right.
You know, and that's the interesting thing that a lot of people don't think about, is that you can come up with a desire, but there's invariably several different ways to accomplish a desire.
Sure.
And, you know, one of the this is getting ahead, but one of the character tropes that is completely overdone is the dark, taciturn, brooding character.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is that character taciturn and dark and brooding? What is it that they desire? You know, one of the things that I've had to grapple with one of my characters that was a little bit like that was that he's a little bit like what George Carlin once said in an interview. I love meeting individuals. I can't stand people. And that was one of the things, is that, you know, he was somebody who had been mistreated and so was, like, perpetually, completely cut off and on guard. Like, his walls were up. But they would come down during individual interactions if he felt safe, if it felt appropriate, if it felt necessary. But when it came to dealing with groups of people, he was an asshole. And, that in his backstory, that tied into how he had been treated his entire life. That there
Right.
were individuals here and there who had treated him well, but by and large, society had treated him very poorly.
Um, right. Uh, that is another aspect. If you're going to play a tropey character, try to think of some clever, original reason for him to have been the way he is, or she. I keep saying he, but
Right.
um, at least try to think of some clever reason that they're that way. Um, but I don't know. Are we ready to go into the other thing yet, or do we have some
No,
more things
no,
to touch
we
on?
can talk through a couple more because I think
All right, go ahead.
we should dig into this the steps 3 through 5 in this Geek and Sundry article too because it's some interesting food for discussion.
By all means.
They say their third step is dig deeply into their strengths. Whether you're willing to admit it or not, there's modesty, there's insecurity, there's, whatever. We all have things that we're good at.
Mm-hmm.
And as a character, there are going to be things that character is good at. Things
Sure.
that character has done many times and has gotten proficient at, gotten good at. Maybe even known for that particular thing or things. But they need to be realistic and they need to be grounded in where you came from and who your influences were.
Right.
Maybe because of the fact that you were bullied, one of your strengths is dealing with pain.
Right.
Whereas other people would suffer an injury that would cripple them, you're used to operating in pain
Mm-hmm.
because you've had that happen your entire life and your body may be a little bit weaker because of it, but at the same time, pain doesn't slow you down quite as much as it slows down the average person.
Right.
Because you've learned how to sort of wall it off in your head and keep going.
So, yeah, and a little addendum to that is a strength for a starting character is something. It could be something that you're gifted or talented in. Now, there's a big difference between being gifted and talented and being skilled.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to have a whole lot of skill in whatever it is, and you have to keep that in mind when making the character. Oh, well, he's a master swordsmaker. No, no, he's not. He can have a talent for it. He can be gifted at it, and have a promising career or an aptitude, but he isn't going to be a master weapons crafter.
Right.
It's just not going to happen. He doesn't have the experience. So you got to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
But there are also other things besides skills or abilities that can be strengths. You can have a strength of will.
Mm-hmm.
You can have a higher intelligence. Things like that, or a big heart.
Mm-hmm.
Things like that are a strength.
Yeah.
That can be applied.
An unshakable morality.
Yeah. These are all things that can be applied to the game that don't necessarily have a number value that is on the character sheet. It's all character. It's personality, and that's something that has to come from the player. And something that also, this is important, that the game master needs to recognize and to take into consideration, you know. Uh, but yeah, I completely agree with that. Think of your strength. Where is your character strong? Where do they excel? What are they good at?
And
What are they good for?
going off what you were talking about if you're going to do a tropey character to take it in a different direction. Well, obviously, one of the other tropes is, the character is an orphan, tragically orphaned. Parents are dead. Okay. That's fine. It's been done to death, but it's gonna be done to death forever because
Guilty.
Oh yeah, same here. you know, um, but try to, like you said, try to find something unique with it. I read about one person who took that trope as a backstory, but they focused on the positive memories they had of their parents and how good their parents were at being parents before they were no longer around.
Mm-hmm.
And it created a character that was motivated to watch for bad parenting and fix it.
Interesting.
Yeah, I had not ever kind of thought that direction. I mean, it's typical, lost your parents, you're sympathetic to orphans, that kind of thing. But this was, every kid deserves parents as good as mine were. And so if I see somebody being a shitty parent, we're going to have a talk. And there may be a little blood involved.
That's kind of what I like about, like with Aramin and Zorith. They weren't exactly orphaned, but they were left to their own, resources and abilities, without parental figures.
Right.
But I kind of like the dynamic. They both found out that their parents are actually still alive, but they both have completely different feelings about how that affects them. Because Zorith wants to find them. She's always wanted to find, make sure that they weren't alive, and now that she knows that they are, she wants to find them and get the family back together.
Mm-hmm.
Where Aramin is like, he's very bitter and very angry at his parents for doing what they did. He understands why they did it, but in his estimation, it was a bad decision. They should not have done it.
Mm-hmm.
And as it turns out, he was right. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At least that's how he feels about it. And so, yeah, he's angry. And he wants to help them for Zori's sake. But other than that, he doesn't really care to have anything to do with them. So it's two different perspectives on the same circumstance that I think it makes it kind of interesting.
Right. Their fourth step is the way that she phrases it: bedevil your character with conflict.
Oh yeah.
And
that's right, drama writing 101.
Yes. But you also have to keep in mind that the conflict should not become overwhelming. The conflict should not become something that stamps out everybody else's storyline.
Sure.
So you gotta ride a little easy with that one. Have some, but don't make it, something that every time the character opens his or her mouth, it's something about that conflict.
Right.
We all know those people that are, stuck on, they can talk about like one or two things and that's it. Whatever you're talking about, they bring it back to subject A or subject B.
Yep. Well, that goes to making a more well-rounded character, a three-dimensional character. If the only thing your character lives for is that conflict, they're not going to be very interesting.
They're also never going to be happy.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's it too. That's mm, when we get into the tropes in a few minutes, I got something to say about that. So,
Yep. Yeah. So,
what?
be particular about what you choose as your character's conflicts. Like the
Yes.
character I was talking about that liked individuals but hated people. One of his big conflicts is that he has a massive inferiority complex because he's been told all his life that he was inferior. And in him, that's manifested as bitterness and anger because he's got enough of a sense of self to know that that probably isn't true. But every time he butts up against society's perception of him and they don't see him as he would like to see himself, that triggers him.
Mm-hmm.
And, this is a character that I've been developing for years at this point, and he's had to learn to kind of embrace the fuck it philosophy. What he's learned from his companions is if you don't respect a particular person, why do you care what they think?
Right.
And that has literally been his saving grace. That and finding a partner who also likes to light things on fire.
Right. But yeah, I mean,
So,
why let them live rent free in your head? Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. All right. And then the last one is one that I think a lot of people, especially at first, don't ever think about. They're writing the backstory and they're coming up with all of this unique and clever and ingenious and, amazing stuff. Not everybody is unique and clever and amazing all the time. So you've got to throw in a little bit of normal, a little bit of mundane.
Okay.
Just so the character actually feels real. I mean, think about the other people you know in your life. Is there anybody you know who simply walks around being fabulous 24 hours a day? No, because we've killed them all. Because they're annoying. You couldn't stand being around somebody like that, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Everybody's got...
I'm looking at Pam, by the
way. Everybody's got, some normal stuff. I mean, talk about Arabelle, She's a cleric, she's a paladin, she's got this innate sense of nobility, but she really likes to cook, which is a very normal thing.
Yeah.
But it's something about her character that gives her pleasure, is to be able to cook and feed people and see people eat. Which is why she's such a good person to have in a party with Zorth.
Right.
Because Zorth really, really, really likes to eat.
Yes.
So it's a match made in heaven. But, just little stuff like that.
Right. Give them something that grounds them to the real world.
Yeah, I mean,
relatable.
My dark and brooding guy currently has a pet squirrel and a pet chipmunk.
Right.
And, he, unlike a certain member of the Mighty Nine, remembers to leave his pets at home with a friend before he goes off into big adventures, because he doesn't have a god to, throw to snatch said pet into a pocket dimension.
Right. Um, there, if I can add to that number five, and this is where I thought you was going with it, but try to think of a flaw for
Yeah,
your character.
yeah.
Not everybody's perfect. Everyone has,
Nobody's perfect.
I mean, everyone has this sort of um, something about them that irritates somebody else, or they have some kind of a weakness or fallibility or failing or something. Try to think of something like that. Um, a lot of people, you mentioned uh, Critical Role. The thing that makes all of their characters so cool isn't the stuff they can do, it's their shortcomings.
Hmm.
That's what makes them so interesting. And they all have some kind of problem, some kind of weakness.
Yep.
Um, you know, and that just makes the character that much more interesting. Liam is the granddaddy of flawed characters, but his characters are always extremely interesting.
Hmm.
Um, and that's why. So think of it doesn't have to be anything exotic or out there, but they dislike this kind of a personality, or they dislike um, vocally, they're outspoken about some um, kind of uh, politics, or something like that. Like for me with Airman, one of his shortcomings is he not only doesn't um, partake in any kind of religion, he thinks it's all a sham. He believes that there are gods, but he thinks the gods don't care anything more about the world than the upper elite nobles that live in castles and ivory towers.
Hmm.
Yeah, when it comes to religion, he just completely meh, wants nothing to do with it, because it's all, you know, and in that way, he's got a place to grow. He's got something to develop, something to evolve. And that's why you give them shortcomings,
Yeah.
because across the campaign, you have something to work on. You have some place for the character to improve.
Yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
we've learned shortcomings on two of the major NPCs in Acathan over the last couple episodes.
sure.
Like, we learned that Wiggy truly engages his mouth before his brain. And we learned that Aloric is hiding a very nasty temper.
Right.
That
So,
was that was probably the most fun I've had in several of the last games, was just letting Aloric's temper out. Just because of the reaction from everyone else. Because,
hmm
he is a tiefling, so he has that demonic ancestry, so
sure.
that is lurking in his psyche all the time. And he
hmm
works very, very hard to control it. But there are times when that control slips. And everybody got to see one of them.
So, character tropes.
Yeah. Let's.
When coming up with a backstory in your character, these are things, if you can't come up with something clever and unique around it, try to avoid them.
Yep. Character trope number 1: the chosen one.
Yeah. Now, I'll say this. I'll give you two examples of where it doesn't work and where it does work. Um, where it doesn't work are things like The Matrix. It started okay,
Yeah.
but then it had nowhere to go after the first movie.
Yep.
They couldn't, it seemed like they couldn't figure out what to do with that.
Right.
And yeah, it just, that's one where it just didn't work. The Chosen One.
Mm-hmm.
Where it did work, where they flipped it on its head, was Anakin Skywalker.
Yeah.
That was cool. That was a great way to handle the Chosen One.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't recommend you do that with your player character, but in terms of storytelling and narrative, that was a really clever way of handling it.
Yep.
So, yeah, the Chosen One. Your thoughts?
Well, it's interesting because I think that there's a way it can be done in a fantasy setting that works pretty well. And I may take shit for saying this, but I think Harry Potter did it pretty well. Because you made the fish out of water the chosen one. The one who came in knowing nothing, surrounded by people who knew so much more than he did.
Yep.
That was a great offset. That
And I have a good addition to that example too. Harry Potter wasn't particularly an exceptional wizard.
No.
He was competent,
Mm-hmm.
but he didn't stand out above all the others,
No, that was Hermione.
Great and right.
Hermione was the best wizard of them all.
So it was awesome. They did that. That was clever.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the chosen one, but he was nothing special.
Next one, of course. Again, this also applies to Harry Potter, the secret heir to the throne.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing was that, again, going back to Harry Potter, they did it in such a way that, he might have been, the heir apparent to certain things, but when he got them, they helped a little, but they didn't overbalance things. Like, his dad leaving him the invisibility cloak.
Right.
Very unique, very powerful magic item. It helped in certain situations, but it didn't solve their problems.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a pretty common one too, yeah.
Yeah. One of the places where I've seen it used well is in the Wheel of Time series. Lan, Moraine's protector. He is the last surviving member of a royal family whose lineage is gone.
Well,
and so
here's the thing with
periodically people run across Lan and go, "Ooh, hey, it's you." That was fantastic.
Yeah, see, here's the thing with what these examples you're giving is those are stories. Those are books.
Yeah.
And you can get away with a lot of that stuff easier. In a role-playing setting, the way to approach it as a player is you got to think that this is going to be an ensemble piece. This isn't going to be my character's story.
Yeah.
So making them the heir apparent to some, throne somewhere, or at least making that something that is advantageous in some way. I don't know. It's tropey, and it's also kind of boring.
And I will say both the idea of the secret heir and the chosen one can create an incredible imbalance in the game. because if that particular character's backstory starts to dominate everything else,
Right.
the rest of the players are going to feel slighted, and rightly so.
Sure.
So, another one, the reluctant hero. Willow.
Right.
You know,
Wolverine.
yeah. The person thrust into the hero role where they didn't really want to be.
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one. But with that one, I think you can do that. There's some clever things you can do with that.
Sure. Well, there's clever things you can do with all of these. But if you just take them
Yeah,
as flat tropes, they're
yeah,
boring as shit.
yeah,
Because everybody knows your backstory already. I mean, they may not
Yep.
know the specific details, but, you know, once they are able to lay that trope on your character, they've pretty much written off learning anything interesting.
right.
Because they know it all already.
Yeah,
The innately lucky character. He's just lucky. Good stuff just happens to him all the time.
right. But the thing with D&D is, they have a facility for that in the game. They have a mechanic,
Right.
and it's, I mean, yeah, the lucky. I don't know. There again, you got sort of this looking for some kind of advantage in the game over all of the other players,
Right.
and that's kind of boring. There's nothing really interesting about that.
Yeah. One that I know makes Annette shudder is the idea of the I don't know how to put it, the blindingly good character. Like,
Gotcha.
just, sunshine incarnate. Pure
Right. Yeah.
and virtuous, and, kind of like how paladins were supposed to be played in, like, 1st and 2nd edition.
Right. Right.
There's
Well,
nothing...
that goes back to...
there's nothing makes her
goes back
teeth
to, like,
itch harder than a character like that. She just wants
Yeah,
to
that
wring
goes
their
back to
neck.
the character with no flaws.
Right.
It makes you a one-dimensional character. You're just not. There's nothing else to you.
Yeah.
There's nothing interesting about you at all.
And we've already talked about, the orphan.
Sure.
We've talked about the morose and brooding dark character.
Yeah, well, those kind of characters, are fine. The thing you got to remember as a player ahead of time, if you want to play a character like that and you want to play them in a group situation in the party, which I assume you do, you have to allow for the character's growth and ability to bond with the other players, the other characters. Despite being brooding, and you don't have to stop being that, but you have to find some commonality and bond with the party.
Yeah.
They have to like you, despite your
flaws.
Yeah, you're being a curmudgeon.
Yeah.
But you have to do that ahead of time. You have to know where you're going with it. You can't just be standoffish and the lone wolf through the entire thing, because it's not, it goes back to what I was saying, ensemble. Everybody's part of this. And if you're off doing your own thing, well, then you're not part of the party.
Yep.
And there's no point in you playing.
And I had a character who started off like that, and not terribly far into the adventure, the group had a come to Jesus meeting with that character and was just like, look, no. If you're going to keep doing this, we don't want you around.
Right.
You need...
Well, there's no point in you being around because you're not.
Right. You need to work with us and, stop running off. Like, I remember...
What else you got real quick?
Actually, that was the end of my list. I was going to ask if you had any others that popped to mind that you
Well,
immediately were like,
those are pretty popular tropes. I don't know if I've got anything off the top of my head. You pretty much covered the big ones,
yeah,
definitely.
yeah. What it all boils down to is that if you're going to write a backstory, and like say that you're in your first campaign and you've never written a backstory before, and you look at these tropes and they give you an idea, super, that's fantastic. But find something unique about that trope. Don't just take it as written and paste it in and say, look, I'm done. You've got to make it unique to you.
Yeah.
And take it in a direction slightly different from anything you've heard or read.
Yeah. And make it something that will inspire your DM to want to put things in the campaign based around your character and their you know issues.
Yeah.
I did think of one real quick.
Okay.
The mopey, woe is me.
Oh, yes.
I had a sad life.
The Eeyore character.
Right, right. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not happy.
Yep. Yep. Self-deprecating, and you know that's an extremely annoying trope. It's very irritating. And it makes it very difficult for the party and the game master to feel sorry for you.
Right.
Because you're doing plenty for everybody.
Right.
So if you do a character like that, make it short-lived. Have the character come out of their shell and flourish early on, because it gets really irritating. It's not fun for anybody.
Yeah. And I will say from personal experience, it don't fall into the trap that I've fallen into, that apparently Sam fell into with that first game with the Mighty Nine, and he came out with the voice for the goblin, and he was like, I guess I'm going to talk like this for the rest of the campaign. And he has had to. I've had to do that. A character that I ran in one of your games, Mike, it was suddenly realizing that I was going to have to do that voice every single game. Synchron.
Ah, yes. Synchron, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Synchron that was a cool voice.
Yeah, but it was hard to muster the energy for it some days, because that voice requires projecting energy even when it's soft, just because of the affect and the inflection, and yeah. So think about the voice you're going to use, and remember that you can like modify it a little bit in the first couple games, but after the first couple games you got to stick with one.
Yep.
So. All right. Well, I hope this was helpful, especially if you're struggling with backstories. I think we've all done that at some point. Everybody gets writer's block, even those of us who like writing backstories. You suddenly go...
Yeah, I do enjoy doing that, but...
Oh, crap, I have no idea. If that happens, just leave it alone for a little while. Go do other things, read other things, experience other things, and then come back to it, because everything you see, everything you read, everything you experience could conceivably be something that you can put into a backstory.
And the one piece of advice I can give real quick: if an inspiration hits, write it down.
Yes.
Keep a notebook. Write it down. Then when the time comes, hey, we're running a new campaign, give me a backstory. You've got a whole list of things to pick from that hit you while you were inspired, when you may not be right then.
Right. Right. Yeah, like I have a document for Acathan that is notes, and half of the stuff I put in there are like, names of people that you're encountering so I don't forget. The other half are stuff I think of while we're playing.
Yep.
And I just, jot it down like, oh yeah, hey,
Sure.
this could be something,
Yeah.
So, yeah. Just and plus, especially as you get older, you're going to go, I'll remember that, and then you will not remember it.
Yeah, you
So, write it down. It's a good habit to get into. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your attention. We hope, again, like I said, that this was helpful. We will be back starting on Sunday for Board Remotely. It's going to be, I'm assuming, Jackbox games or something like that this weekend because I'll be podcast recording. So I won't be around. But, yeah. And then we'll have player chat Monday night, more Lands of Acathan Tuesday night, and another GM chat a week from tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern U.S. time here on Artifacts Worldwide, or on our YouTube channel if you're watching it later.
8 p.m.
8 p.m. Yep, sorry. See, I'm still tired from Saturday. Okay.
7 p.m. Central.
7 p.m. Central. There you go. So, as always, stay sane, stay safe, wear your mask, just shut up and do it.
Especially in this day and age.
Yeah, things are getting scary out there. It's going to get as bad as it's gotten and maybe worse before it gets better. So, please protect yourself as best you can. And we'll see you next Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern for more on GM Chat. Good night, everybody.
See ya.